Good morning and good afternoon if you are joining us from Europe or from Israel. I am Magda Teder. I'm the Schwidler Chair in Judaic Studies at Fordham University. I'm very honored to welcome you for our first webinar in the series Scholars at War, organized in partnership with the History Department of the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, the American Academy for Jewish Research, which in the 1930s and 1940s devoted considerable resources to rescuing and supporting scholars affected by the Nazi regime and the war, and the Lviv Center for Urban History. I am particularly grateful to Dr. Irina Klimenko from the Ludwig Maximilian University for all her work and coordination with the Ukrainian scholars affected by the current war and for being such a key partner in this enterprise. This series is meant to uplift Ukrainian scholars' voices and offer support. With people in war zone and in exile from their homes in need for basic supplies, it may not seem urgent to give attention to scholarship. Nevertheless, society depends also on those who create and preserve knowledge through their scholarship and work in institutions devoted to research and culture. And so we scholars sitting comfortably in our homes in peace wanted to recognize and support those who are facing the harrowing reality of this war. We're therefore honored and grateful to our panelists today, Vitaly Chernoivanenko, who is here with us, and Sofia Diak, who we're hoping will be able to join us in a few minutes, for agreeing to join us in these extremely difficult circumstances. I want to introduce to you Dr. Irina Klimenko, who is a scholar of early modern European history with a particular interest in European entangled history of East and West, as well as in historical theory and interdisciplinary methods of historical research. She, as I mentioned, has been instrumental in creating this series, and I want to hand over the screen to her to introduce our two panelists.
Thank you so much, Magda. Also from my side, we are so very honored and grateful to our panelists today, Vitaly Chernoivanenko and Sofia Diak, for agreeing to join us in these extremely difficult circumstances. I will start with the introduction of Vitaly and hope that Sofia will join us in a minute. Dr. Chernoivanenko is based in Kiev, where he is right now. He's a senior lecture fellow, senior research fellow at Judaica Department in the Vernadsky National Library of Ukraine. He's also a president of Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies. Also, he serves as chief editor of Judaica Ukrainica. Dr. Chernoivanenko's work lies predominantly in ancient Judaism. His dissertation was on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he has since published about various aspects of ancient Judaism. Thank you so much, dear Vitaly, for joining us today. I would also introduce Sofia Diak with the hope that we can speak to her in a minute too. Dr. Sofia Diak holds degrees both in history and sociology. Since 2010, she has served as the director of the Lviv Center for Urban History, which, since the full-scale Russian invasion, is actively aiding scholars displaced from different regions in Ukraine. Dr. Diak's research interests include post-war urban recovery and transformations in Eastern Europe, heritage infrastructures and practices in socialist cities and their legacies. Another area of her interest is public history. Dr. Diak has curated several exhibitions and educational projects related to rethinking the past, especially in urban public spaces. So we are grateful for her and hope that she will be here in a minute too.
So I am again very grateful to you joining and Irina for organizing this, helping to organize this series, and Vitaly for joining us from Kiev in these very, very difficult times. Maybe let's get us started with, as we're waiting for Sophia, Vitaly, would you be able to tell us about your professional position, your work life and research before February 24th? What it was like, what were you doing, what were you engaged in?
Thank you, Magda. Thank you, Irina. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, and it's my honor to join you, to join this event. I could never imagine that I would be speaking, I will be speaking in such times when, you know, when the world is pledged in darkness. And so there is one nation that that still needs to prove it's right for freedom, for independence, for liberty. What about me? You have already introduced my affiliation. You said about my affiliations. What about my professional work? So I specialize in Judaic studies. From the graduation from my university, so it was the entire all time from my graduation. I'm in Jewish studies. That is my life. Just as the first statement, which is very important for me. And so I feel myself as Ukrainian scholar, but also a Jewish scholar. As Irina said, so my dissertation was about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Who knows what the Dead Sea Scrolls are, and what this field is? And this field is not terra incognita. So there are many works and many books and many articles. So first of all, people ask me, so what was your hidush? So what did you find there? What's new there? So I'm a historian, and my work was historiographical. So my purpose was to collect all theories, all hypotheses, all conceptions on two issues, on two questions: the identification, the authorship of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In other words, who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the identification of the Qumran site. So in other words, what the Qumran site was. So I analyze all the theories and conceptions, and I have my personal opinions. So my teacher has passed away recently. You probably know him. His name is Norman Golb. He was a long-time professor at the University of Chicago, and a prominent Orientalist. So I was very lucky to have such communication with such a great scholar, and prepare to and to defend dissertation on such topic. But when I moved to other topics within antiquity and the Second Temple period of the Jewish history, so I focus on biblical texts. I focus on erotic motifs including homoerotic motifs in ancient Jewish literature, first of all biblical literature, but also the Talmud and in the middle, so apocrypha and pseudepigrapha and so forth. So that was and is my research work. But for last 10 years, 11 years, or even 12 years, almost 12 years. I'm also involved in different institution work, like the very in my life and in my career, there was a very important year. That was 2012. I had 3 missions: to defend the dissertation, to establish the first Ukrainian scholarly journal in Jewish studies, peer-reviewed journal, and so that is Judaica Ukrainica, and to establish the first degree in Jewish studies program in Ukraine. So that was a master's program in Jewish studies at the National University of Kiev Mohyla Academy, one of the oldest schools, universities in Ukraine, found in 615. 1615, yeah. So and it's not just a remark, it's interesting because when there were no universities in the Russian Empire, in Moscovia and then Russian Empire, so there were schools, there were universities in the Ukrainian territory, in Kiev, in Ostrog. So now these there were circumstances, and I had to leave the university in 2020. So now I'm not teaching for some time from 2020. But this program is quite successful still. As I know, of course, the pandemic influence, the education, but anyway, this program is one of the programs who are liberal arts programs, Western oriented programs with invited lecturers from abroad, and an internship in Israel every summer for the students, and so on. In 2015, I was among 2 co-founders of the National Association for Jewish Studies, the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies. And when it happened in spring 2015, and just in half a year, in 6 months, I was invited by my friend Michal Galas to Krakow. Michal Galas is the chef of Jewish studies at the Jagiellonian University, as well as he's the former president of, I guess so, for the former. He was the president of the Polish Towarzystwo Association for Jewish Studies. And they in 2015 they celebrated 20-year anniversary of the Polish Association, and we had just and we existed just 6 months. So they organized 2 panels, Polish panel and Ukrainian panel. I was honored to moderate the Ukrainian panels. There were scholars mostly from Lviv, besides me. But now, you need to know and to understand that Jewish studies in Ukraine is very emerging field. Now we have almost 50 members in the association, and it's not bad, just believe me, because I know that there are associations with hundreds and maybe thousands members, but for Ukraine, which was under the Soviet rule, and where Oriental studies, Jewish studies were banned or at least highly censored. So it's like a miracle that for these 30 years since our independence proclaimed in 1991, we have a very prospective field. Jewish studies, there are scholars and mostly non-Jewish. But this situation is typical, we understand, yeah, like in Poland and in some other countries, we have Jews and non-Jews in our association, but all these scholars want to sincerely want to research Jewish heritage of Ukraine, Jewish heritage of Eastern Europe, because okay, so this is I understand this is one, just this is only one question of yours, but just one thing to add at the moment, that okay, that's it.
Well, Vitaly, it's these fascinating accomplishments, and because the world has completely changed in the last week, I have to ask you, I mean, Ukraine is in war for the last 8 years, but February 24th has changed completely everything again. So may I ask you how this impacted not only your personal, but also your professional life, and also the institutions you have mentioned and that were so successfully established in the last years?
Thank you, Irina. Ukraine in a war, you said 18 years, yeah? 8 years.
8.
You meant 8 years, last 8 years. This is the permanent 8 years, of course. But as a historian, you know, some people, before telling you about the more about the current situation and this influence and impact and so on, I would like to tell you and to say a few words. Just, you know, this is my personal reflection, because I'm a historian. So as a historian, when some people, you know, and it's a real situation, then many people in Ukraine, I mean 2014, when after the Euromaidan and the Revolution of Dignity, as we call it here, when Russia occupied the Crimean Peninsula and invaded Donbass, the part of Donbass, the eastern Ukraine. So I remember many people here in Ukraine, including Kiev, and you also need to understand that Kiev was mostly Russian-speaking city. So now we have half and half, approximately half Ukrainian speaking and half Russian speaking. But still many people whose language is Russian as a mother tongue, as a native language, like me, you know, like me. So my parents' language is English, is Russian, not Ukrainian. So I became fluent in Ukrainian when I was graduating the last years before the graduation from my school, from my how do you call it in the US? Not the university, you understand, but the school, okay, secondary school.
Okay. Yeah.
Secondary school, yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
High school. High school, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So my 10th and my 9th and 10th years in my school. This is high school, yes. And so it was interesting that I was in a Ukrainian school, but so we had classes in Ukrainian, but during the breaks, and so the pupils speak Russian, and I don't remember people who speak in Ukrainian, at least one or two in my school, everywhere in Kiev. So it was so rare phenomenon to find and to hear Ukrainian language here in Kiev. So that was some time ago, 20 years ago, and even back to 2014, there were people who had friendship with Russians. So there were many people who had friendship with Russians, and liberal, educated people, yeah, and they were shocked. So they watched TV when there were battles in Donbass in 2014, and they said, "Oh my, Russians." Okay, because we had no illusions, at least, you know, that when Russians said that these guys in Donbass are Ukraine are insurgents, yeah,
insurrectionists, separatists.
Yes, separatists. Of course, we understood that these guys were completely inspired by Russians, by Kremlin. So so how the people were shocked how these guys could attack us, how could they kill us. So and they were sincerely really shocked. That was a real shock for them. Now the situation has changed radically, of course, but I think we'll speak about it a bit later. But so back to my reflection, I understood that as a historian, I know the history of the Russian-Ukrainian relations in the 17th century, in the 19th century in the Russian Empire, when everything Ukrainian was banned in the Russian Empire, and the revolution and the Ukrainian attempt, when the Ukrainian attempt to proclaim its independence, yeah, as a Ukrainian People's Republic was failed. This idea was destroyed by the Bolsheviks, and then the Soviet Union. And so I understood that Russia considers Ukraine as its territory, as its organic territory, or, you know, eternal territory. Of course, I understand that this is a very false idea, but, you know, so that was a question of time for me when Russia will attack Ukraine. Maybe in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 40 years. But I thought it could happen. So for me, it's not a surprise. Now, responding, let me respond to your questions about the influence on my institutions, or the institution which I represent. let me remind, there are the National Library of Ukraine, the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies, okay, and the journal, but it's not the institution, but this is the joint journal of the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies and the Kyiv Mohila Academy. So the library, of course, the library is closed. There is a war. It is closed. I didn't say this. I think it might be interesting for our listeners, especially for Jewish studies scholars. I guess Jewish studies scholars, or most of them, the majority of them, knows this. But anyway, so the collection of Jewish books and manuscripts at the Judaica Department at the Institute of Manuscript at the Vernadsky National Library of Ukraine is one of the biggest collections in the world. No more, no less. There are different opinions, but there is one that there are three biggest collections in the world. Ivo Institute in New York City, National Library of Israel, and National Library of Ukraine, which is based in Kiev, and where I work, where my main affiliation is. So we have 8,000 manuscripts from 15th to 20th century. So this is only one example, but if I can add more and more about books, and not only books, the Jewish music folklore is based here. So I mean, not the all Jewish folklore, but okay. So I'm sorry, the Jewish music folklore of Eastern Europe. So the main material, so the biggest possible material is preserved here. So this is very and highly important to preserve this heritage, especially now during the war. But friends, I'm sorry, one thing that I'm not allowed to tell you about the current situation of, just believe me, at the moment, they're okay. So this collection is fine, but I can tell you about yes, transferring, moving, locations, and so on. It's very confidential situation, because it's a question for all our cultural heritage. Yes, this is a statement from the Ministry of Culture of Ukraine, because we cannot publish any locations. Not to be targeted by Russians.
That's right.
You understand? Yes.
Yeah.
So the library is closed, but some of our collaborators, fellows, are there. So sometimes, not every day, unfortunately. So it's more or less okay. What about the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies? It's we don't think about the office, about our laptops and this. We think about people, about our colleagues. So from the first day of this war, my position, my opinion was that all our resources, both financial and human, should be for the help for the help to other colleagues, to other people. Whatever we can do, we are trying to do. So in these circumstances, I can speak about myself, what I can do and what I'm doing. So first of all, from the first day, I began to help our local defense forces here in Kiev, because we understood we need to defend Kiev, and there is no questions. You know, I'm very thankful for all colleagues worldwide who invited me to their countries, the US, Canada, France, Sweden, Germany, Israel, Switzerland. But first of all, not everyone knows this, that men 18 to 60 are not allowed to leave the country. They have a military duty, but moreover, for me, my personal opinion, I don't want to leave my country. I don't want to leave Kiev, because I was born here. I love Kiev. Kiev is the most beautiful city in the world. Come on. So Putin, I'm not afraid of Putin and his military forces. So even, you know, even my okay, my location. No. So my parents are very brave. So they're 74 and 73, my dad and my mom relatively. So, and they said, no, never. So so we believe in our military forces, we believe in our local defense and so on, and our police and but if the last chance and if we hope not that such thing will not happen, but if the last thing to defend our country and our capital will be for, you know, that everyone should do something, that, and my parents said, so we're okay with Molotov cocktails. I hope that there is no terrorism in my words, yes, and permitted in your countries. So I began to help the defense, as well as volunteering as much as possible, because, you know, I can shoot, so I can use a gun, but it's not the first mission of mine. I don't feel this is my mission, you know. My mission, my first mission, is to help people as much as I can, from the people whom I see every day in the streets, including homeless people who are not fine, who were not fine before the war, but can you imagine now? So and of course, so these days, during all these days, every day I'm trying to help the members of the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies and their members. So I'm urging I'm asking here different institutions, you know, because I'm where this is okay. Just a few words and give you. I'm very thankful to all institutions worldwide and to all colleagues when they try to help by opening these scholarships positions and so on in their schools. It's very important, but you know, at the moment I can speak about all Ukrainian scholars, but I can speak about Jewish studies scholars. Okay, Magda. So Irina, I know at the moment we have 3 weeks of the war, and I still know only a few. Okay, several. Several means 3 or 4. Yeah, several colleagues, several colleagues who are beyond Ukraine, in Germany, in Poland. So these positions and this help might be helpful, and it's undoubtedly valuable for them. And we share this information, of course, with these colleagues, and we hope it will be helpful, and maybe it is already helpful for them. But you know, these are several scholars, and the majority of scholars, the absolute majority of the scholars, are here in Ukraine. So I ask colleagues, please help them here and help them now. So help their families in different ways, by different means, including financial means. So this is my work, more or less.
So yeah, we actually had a question about what kind of, what is especially needed now, what kind of support, given the circumstances, is needed for scholars and science in light of the so you just said that most of the scholars are in Ukraine, and you know, we have been hearing about a lot of the residential fellowships for scholars, which even Fordham was thinking of organizing and having a residential scholarship. And then Irina, in conversation with Irina, we realized that the need is not to bring people, 1-2 people there, but it is to support scholars there, and the American, or both, yes, when possible. And one of the things we did create, and I'll send a link to, so you can let other people know, is a fellowship, a remote fellowship from the American Academy for Jewish Research and Fordham to support a number of scholars. We hope will apply in a very simple way. We're not requiring letters of recommendations and all kinds of things, but we want to, and I think there are more institutions now that are doing this kind of support. Irina, since we're talking about, and then we'll turn to questions maybe from the audience, and there's so much we could talk about for 2 hours probably, but Irina, I would like you to tell us what you've been personally, and your university in Munich have been doing for the scholars who managed to leave, who have not stayed in Ukraine, and if you could share with us what is going on there, what are the needs, and what's the situation in Europe?
Well, yes, thank you, Magda. Maybe very briefly. In the very first days of Russian full-scale invasion on the 24th, from the 24th on, my colleagues from the History Department of the Munich University have said Ukraine Fund actively providing aid for displaced Ukrainian scholars in Germany. We received over 60 applications, and the first scholars already arrived in Munich, and mentioned men cannot leave the country, so mainly these are women with children, with their children, with the children of their relatives, with the older parents. So these are people, mainly scholars, who basically try to save their children from being further traumatized. At the same time, and Vitaly made it very clear in his statement, that this is only one tiny part of what have to be done, because many people, many scholars stay in Ukraine. Some of them because they don't want to live, they cannot leave the country, but very many of them because they do not want to leave the country. And we have to think of ways how to support them too. And right now, partnering with Fordham Center for Jewish Studies, thank you so much, Magda, for making this possible. We're also working on an additional remote program to support those who are in Ukraine now and have to or want to stay there. And we rely very much on your support for donations. You can see the links on the homepage of this lecture series. We also will post the Ukrainian institutions, so you can choose whether you donate to our universities or directly to Ukrainian institutions. The Vitaly's Association is also listed there, so we want to invite you to support his initiative too. For other kinds of support, please feel free to contact me directly anytime. And this remote program also will be done in cooperation with Lviv Center for Urban Studies, whose director, Sofia, just joined us. And sorry, Sofia, I already have introduced you, so maybe we will proceed without repeating this.
Yeah, so Sofia can tell us about the center and what they are doing. I just want to say that I sent the link to the lecture series, and at the bottom at the moment are 3 links to donate, and I'll tell you how it helps. The Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies, the Munich Initiative for Ukrainian Scholars, and Fordham Center for Jewish Studies. Those of you might wonder what we do. Well, we offer those scholarships, and the money that is coming since the beginning of the war, since we made the call, will all go to support those scholarships, fellowships, and the more we have funds, the more the funds will be given to Ukrainian scholars. So these 3, and we hope to add more as the donation links become available. So I'll now stop and have Sofia maybe tell us about the Lviv Center for Urban History.
Hello, apologies for being late and messing up time zone, Eastern European time and Central European time. So I'm in Krakow now for 3 days, and tomorrow I'll be packing and going back to Lviv. This is where the Center for Urban History is located and where we continue operating. So this is a combination institution. We have research. We do public history, we do digital history, and we do educational projects. And as Magda asked to reflect, what was our usual operational activities. So these are basically 4 areas, and January and February are the quietest months in the whole year. It kind of, taking time to wrap up the previous years, to start moving with new plans. And this is basically where we were in February, like preparing to have more active March and April in the year. So one of our activities was connected with research and a project related to heritage. It was called Heritage Backstage. And the idea was to look at the way concepts and practices and actors changed historically, and take the example of the city of Lviv, known as Lviv and Lemberg, which is a really apt place to see how heritage developed from the 19th century until now, basically in different contexts. We're talking about empire, we talk about nation state, we talk about socialist state, and we talk about now critical heritage studies. We also think about what is Polish heritage, what is Jewish heritage, what is Ukrainian heritage, and at the end of the day, what is urban heritage. So we were very much in this project discussing it as a result of our research, but also how we were doing to have how we were preparing online exhibition and then physical exhibition in 2023. And of course, you know, if you think about now, I mean, we are not thinking about writing texts, but we are more following and contributing where we can about heritage preservation in a time of war. And in Lviv, it is obvious that we do have some time. The time that, for example, was not there. If you think about Mariupol, if you think about Kharkiv, and then, you know, even today, this is where I'm in Krakow, part of the meetings are about what can be done, how to help, should things be wrapped, should things be hidden, should things be removed, who makes this decision. So you kind of the heritage and in extreme situation of war became from the object of study, which it was, you know, it was interesting also to recall what was the discussion that there are some, not so many in the World War I and World War II context, but really living it through. So another project, which was also intersection of research and digital history, was about home movies. Over the last 10 years, we developed one of the biggest collections, actually the biggest kind of, but we hope it will be one of, as we partnership with Kiev institution, Lviv Center. So it's a collection of home movies. So and for April, we were planning to open an exhibition, which was last year at the center in Kyiv, and to make more regional cases involve home movie from not only Western Ukraine, but also we do have a collection from cities like Pokrovsk and Mariupol and Kramatorsk, and of course Kyiv, and of course Kharkiv. And it's actually off the table because the Lviv Center moved to Lviv, partly, and also finding places for their holdings and thinking that, you know, their film, because they also archive, we have films, not digital copies, but their film. And it also shows how certain programming is not possible during the war, because we did turn our conference room and cafe into shelter, and then thinking about what can we show. I think we were discussing that probably cartoons to kids, maybe some classics, film, but not home movies, because that would be very painful, you know, because shelter is for people who lost home, who probably can't go back to the home as it was, and some even can't have their apartments because they are bombed, and we can't show home films. And that's a question that, you know, how, you know, the context matter, and context did change that, you know, dramatically. So, and finally, this was educational part of our activities. So we planned with like education platform with online courses. And we will not be recording online courses right now, but the part where we prepare and translate sources from Ukrainian or Russian into English will be more highlighted, especially as we are talking how not only, I mean, Ukraine in particular, but only also Eastern Europe in general has been less, maybe not enough researched. And we talk about certain, you know, focuses on centers. Then we do have definitely more centers for Russian studies than we have centers for Ukrainian studies, which actually doesn't mean that you have to directly have exactly more studies of Ukraine. But actually it makes you think about how in academia we have this disbalance in knowledge production, in availability of sources, in cooperations, and we do have certain experiences and certain voices which are coming mainly from centers, you know, imperial or big entities, political centers, more resonant, more visible, and voices which are from so-called peripheries are less visible, less heard. And this is not only about Ukraine, it definitely makes us very acutely aware of how global production of knowledge is also hierarchical and is also has its power structures and injustices. And I think that we can't do much, but for example, if we say that you have to rethink how you teach, in what position you are as a teacher or as an academic, we also would be good to not only say rethink cooperation with Russia, but also what else we can do. So this is basically what also we are right now thinking of putting an emphasis more. So that's here. I will just stop here, and then can add.
I just want to say that we posted a link to the center, and Vitaly, who we lost on posted a link.
No, I'm here, Magda, because because my internet is slow sometimes.
Okay,
sorry.
Okay, good that you are with us. So I just want to say that the center's website is really amazing, has amazing number of resources, and they're available. Many of them are available also in English. There's a fantastic mapping resource for Kiev and Lviv. I grew up in Poland, so in Polish it's Lviv, but it is now Lviv, and the complexity, as Sophia said, the name changes shows the complexity of the history. And I actually wanted to ask you both about, and Sophia, I was glad that you mentioned the power relations and the collaborations that so much of it is with major powers, and this is actually for us the silver lining. And it is terrible that a war had to happen, but it puts your voices out there and makes the world discover the amazing scholarship that is being produced in Ukraine and your centers and or Vasily's institutions, and I think, as Vasily said, for scholars in Jewish studies, the Vernadsky Library is known as an incredible resource because the territory of what is now Ukraine has been the heart of Jewish history, Eastern European Jewish history for centuries. So I had a question for you. That the related to the relations, academic relations with the powers that had been controlling Ukraine before, that is with the academic institutions in Poland and with the academic institutions in Russia. And of course, Poland now becomes even more connected to Ukraine, but what will happen? What do you think will happen short or long term with those collaborations also with Russia? Scholarly, I'm talking scholarly collaborations. I'm not talking about political stuff, but how this is now going to impact both the relations with Poland, you can say, and I know, Sophia, you got your PhD from Warsaw, but also I think with Russian scholars and institutions.
May I begin? Or Sophia?
Vitaly, you begin.
Oh, thank you.
Let's rotate.
I was listening to Sophia about the activities of her center, and I realized that they didn't mention at least some words about our activities. Yes, from the Ukraine. If you allow me to add this, Magda, Irina, just some words about the activities of the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies since 2015. Beside the academic journal, which I mentioned before, so there are annual conferences of the association. We began them not at the very beginning, but in 2017 there was their conference about Ukrainian Jews during the revolution. Yes, because that was in 2017 there was the centennial of the revolution, and then next year we had the very first academic conference on Israel, on the state of Israel, because there was anniversary, 70th anniversary of the state of Israel. Two first conferences took place in Kiev, and in 2019, in 2019, we had a conference in Odessa. It was devoted to it's bombing now. Sorry. The conference in Odessa, it was devoted to Ukrainian Jewish literary contexts in the second half of 19th, first half of 20th century. The conference of 2020 was postponed because of pandemic. It was postponed to 2021 and was held in Lviv at the Center for Urban Studies. Thank you, Sophia. It was a great experience. It was devoted to Hasidism and Haskalah in the 18th and 19th century. And the new conference had to be held in the autumn, but again, because of pandemic, it was postponed to this spring. And so this conference had to be held just, in early April in Dnipro, former Dnipropetrovsk. Devoted to the first decade after Shoah, after the Holocaust in Eastern and Central Europe. And I'm very happy that and hope it will happen. We have the scheduled conference. One of the new conferences is our second experience with collaboration with the Center for Urban History in Lviv. It is scheduled for December this year, and it's titled "Returning Galician Jews from Oblivion." So we have conferences, we have the journal, and also for last 2 years we're working on the Yiddish project of the Ukrainian Association for Jewish Studies. We have teaching of Yiddish, and this experience is quite good, and it is already recognized by some of our partners who would like to help us with this project in future. Okay, what about a collaboration with Polish and Russian institutions? Your question, Magda.
Yeah, just so
yeah, I'm very brief. Yeah, the Polish direction in our academia, in our Jewish studies, was not from now, but Sophia can confirm that this cooperation is quite long time cooperation. So it began many years ago, and it was very intensive and fruitful for the last decade, as of course, because of the geographic location. So Lviv is closer to Poland and to Polish institutions, and such institutions as the Center for Urban Studies or Jewish Studies at the Ukrainian Catholic University. So they have very intensive cooperations and connections to Polish institution, to Polish colleagues. But in Kyiv, for a long time, Kyiv was closer to Russia and to the Russian institutions. First of all, the Center Sefer, based in Moscow, led by Rashid Kaplanov and now by Victoria Mochalova. So they had incredible project for those times, you know, in the former Soviet Union. It was undoubtedly it was the biggest center of Jewish studies in the former Soviet Union. So our students, our scholars actively visited the conferences, the schools of this center. And you know, after 2014, so not even for Kiev, even for us here, so many of us and many colleagues here so decided not to come to Russia, even in 2014. So for a long time, so I visited Russia every year, sometimes 2-3 times per year. So my last trip to Russia, to Moscow, for the presentation of the book where I contributed to. So it happened in late 2013. So that was my very last trip to Russia. And now I'm sorry that because of this war, there is no talks, there is no talk, and there is no talk about trips to Russia, and even about any possible cooperation. So of course we know that there are people, there are colleagues who oppose the Russian regime, who oppose Putin. So but you know, there is one statement at the end from my side, just one statement, that just one thought, that you know, even if some of colleagues would like to have any relations with Russian colleagues, I mean to have joint conferences and so on, even they want. So it's not there will be no understanding for such actions, you know, in Ukraine. And I think that this situation will be for a long time, maybe for decades.
Okay, Sophia, what's your take on that?
You know, what I would actually invite us to not to have a direct comparison, but to think that we are talking about very different Russian and Polish. So these are two biggest neighbors of Ukraine. And as you know, Ukraine is a part of imagination, spatial imagination from both of them.
That's right.
And we right now are living through bloodshed compared, because of the imagination, Russian imagination of its space and its history, as voiced by Russian president. And actually would like to draw or think about this enormous solidarity which we see from Poland. I mean, on human level, I'm right now in Poland, and when I was driving, for example, through a gas station, entered toilet with a lady, and we just chatted in Polish, and then she heard that my Polish is a bit Eastern Polish, and she said, "Where are you from?" And I'm from Lviv, but I'm going back. And I thanked her for all the cooperation. And she said, leaving, and she said, can you take my number just in case you need something? And, this is really like down to this little chat in a toilet in a gas station, where you see this, like popular individual gestures of solidarity, and what it makes you think that what a huge work Polish society did in reflecting its superior position vis-a-vis its neighbor or its minority or its former Kresy, like no territories, which were historically part of Poland, and recalibrating these relations, not in a relation of center and periphery, of dominance and subjugation, of power and loyalty, but into partnership, into relations of solidarity. Relations where we have subjects. I mean, it still is not something that is over, and I think that it takes forever to keep unlearning imperialism, if you want to quote Ariella Ezelay, whom I'm kind of recalling time and again these days. But it's something that you see that it's possible, and Polish society did a lot, which also puts a question, what will be the response from Ukrainian society after experiencing such generous human political support and help? And I am hopeful that in the future, we will be, through this shared experience, we will be able to revisit in a new way conversations which were painful, which were hard, and which we still haven't talked through, conversations about Berlin, conversations about, all the difficult topics. Right now, we probably are not able to pick up these conversations, but I do hope that this shared experience will really creates a space of trust. Mm-hmm. So with Russia, there is a lot of work to do in the future. I mean, what I'm telling about Poland, with no way comparing Poland to Russia, to be certain, but that there is a way for having conversation, but it actually requires a lot of homework. So, and it's not about having like immediate dialogue table. It's about really having an introspection and reflection on the Russian side. And I think that here it's a lot of task to do for people who are not necessarily in political power, but very much in intellectual and cultural sphere, to have a deep work, like take pause and do work of who we are, what is our language, what is our thinking, what is our culture, that actually can somehow be implicated, quoting another scholar, in a situation which leads to such, in other words, how cultural arrogance can lead to utmost violence. I think that for me would be a big question to take, and I think that cultural and academic sphere can be both implicated in the wrong way, but also can be responsible and take responsibility and have this conversation. Our cooperation with Russia is really much more distant, as Vitaly pointed out. Lviv is further away. We did have a cooperation with European University in Petersburg, but we, for example, didn't have the Higher School of Economics, which had, for example, many cooperations with many universities in North America. And it's actually usually what was in the venue of ACES, where we were, getting to talk with Russian colleagues. While it is very hard to imagine when, and I definitely think that this is not a conversation for now. First of all, war has to end, and second, justice has to be served. And then I do hope that in a longer perspective, there is a hope that there would be a conversation between Ukraine and Russia, which is based on different principles and premises, but that will require a lot of work, especially from academics. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah.
Well, we're running out of time, and I want to thank you, and I hope we will actually continue this conversation, that you'll be willing to come back, because I think we've let a lot of threads open, and I think it would be really, if possible, if the circumstances allowed and you're so willing, to continue probe at these very, very deep questions about history, scholarship, and war, and the present and the future, because I think we're seeing it in the making. And I know, Sophia, you've been thinking about a lot your work on the urban space around the World War II and aftermath, and what happens, and with it, and how to think about it now as the war is happening. So I hope we'll come back. We have to stop. I know that you also have time constraints, but Irina and I will be back next week on Thursday on another one of those conversations, but we'll hope to bring you both back at some other point, so in the future. So thank you. We're really honored, and thank you for making the time in these extraordinarily difficult circumstances. We're really, really grateful. Irina, thank you so much for masterminding that. Thank you.
Thank you, Magda.
Thank you. Thank you. Dziękuję, Magdo. Thank you.
Дякую, Віталій.
Дякую, dziękuję bardzo. Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank. And for those who are still except Israel, still we here, but all, especially for those who are in the United States. So you are still in Purim. So I frolichen Purim to you.
Thank you, and stay safe, and we'll hopefully continue. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.